Chapter 1, The Invitation. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the dilapidated mansion that sat on the edge of Ravenwood Forest. The mansion, long abandoned and whispered about in hushed tones, was a relic of a bygone era. Its once grandiose structure now lay in ruin, windows shattered, and walls covered in creeping ivy. Few dared to venture near it, believing it to be cursed. Elena received the invitation on a stormy evening. The parchment was old and brittle, the ink faded but legible. You are cordially invited to a gathering at Blackwood Manor. Your presence is requested on the night of the full moon. Do come alone. No signature. No indication of who sent it. Just the ominous date and the address. Despite her better judgment, Elena's curiosity got the better of her. She was an aspiring writer, always on the lookout for inspiration, and the mystery of Blackwood Manor was too enticing to resist. On the appointed night, she made her way to the mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. The wind howled through the trees, and the shadows seemed to dance malevolently. As she approached the front door, it creaked open as if expecting her. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing through the cavernous hallway. There was no response, only the sound of the wind whistling through the broken windows. Steeling herself, she stepped inside. The interior was just as decayed as the exterior, but there was something else, an almost palpable sense of dread. The air was thick with it. Elena ventured deeper into the mansion, her footsteps echoing ominously. She passed by dusty portraits of grim-faced ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow her every move. Suddenly, she heard a noise, a soft rustling, like the whisper of silk on stone. She turned sharply, but there was nothing there. Her pulse quickened as she continued forward, drawn by an inexplicable force. At the end of a long corridor, she found a room illuminated by flickering candlelight. In the center of the room was a large, oak table, and on it, a dusty old book bound in leather. The book seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, drawing her in. With trembling hands, Elena opened the book. The pages were filled with strange symbols and ancient incantations. As she read, the air around her grew colder, and she felt a presence, a dark, malevolent force that seemed to seep from the very walls of the mansion. "Welcome, Elena," a voice whispered from the shadows. "We've been expecting you." Chapter 2, The Guests. Elena spun around, her eyes wide with terror. The room was empty, yet she felt 100 eyes upon her. The candlelight flickered, casting grotesque shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. She clutched the book to her chest, its ancient pages trembling with her breath. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Your hosts," came the reply, echoing from every corner of the room. The shadows coalesced, forming indistinct shapes that seemed to hover just beyond the edge of the light. "Why did you bring me here?" Elena asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The shadows shifted, and from them emerged figures dressed in old-fashioned attire, their faces pale and eyes hollow. They were the inhabitants of Blackwood Manor, long deceased but never truly gone. "We needed someone," one of them said, his voice cold and detached. "Someone who could read the book and release us from our torment." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Release you? How?" The figure stepped forward, and she could see him more clearly now. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, and his skin stretched tight over his bones. "The book contains a ritual. A way to free us from this purgatory. You must perform it." Elena looked down at the book, its symbols now glowing faintly. "And what happens to me if I do this?" The ghostly figure smiled, a grim, haunting smile. "You will join us, of course. A fair exchange, wouldn't you say?" Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She had to get out of there, but the door was gone, replaced by a solid wall of stone. Panic surged through her veins as she backed away from the advancing specters. "You can't leave," the lead ghost said, his voice echoing with finality. "Not until the ritual is complete." Chapter 3, The Ritual. Desperation clawed at Elena as she frantically flipped through the book's pages. Each symbol seemed to writhe and twist before her eyes, making her head spin. The ghosts circled her, their expressions a mix of anticipation and sorrow. "Please," she begged, "there must be another way." "There is no other way," another ghost said, her voice soft but unyielding. "We are bound to this place, and only the ritual can break the curse." Elena's eyes scanned the page before her, and she realized with a sinking heart that she understood the symbols. The knowledge had somehow seeped into her mind, filling her with a sense of dread and inevitability. With shaking hands, she began to recite the incantation. The air around her crackled with energy, and the ghosts watched in silence, their forms growing more distinct. The room seemed to darken, the shadows closing in as she spoke the final words. A sudden gust of wind extinguished the candles, plunging the room into darkness. Elena felt a searing pain in her chest, as if her very soul was being torn apart. She screamed, the sound echoing through the mansion. When the pain subsided, she found herself lying on the cold, stone floor. The book was gone, and so were the ghosts. She was alone, the silence oppressive. But something was different. She could feel it in the air, in her very bones. She stood up, her movements slow and deliberate. As she walked through the mansion, she realized with dawning horror that she was no longer the same. The house seemed to welcome her, the walls whispering secrets she could now understand. She was a part of Blackwood Manor, bound to its ancient curse. Chapter 4: The Discovery. Days turned into weeks, and Elena wandered the mansion, her mind a whirl of confusion and fear. She encountered other spirits, lost souls who had once been lured to the mansion by the same mysterious invitation. They, too, were trapped, their fates entwined with the curse of Blackwood Manor. One night, while exploring the basement, Elena stumbled upon a hidden door. It creaked open to reveal a small, dimly lit chamber. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it, a black, obsidian mirror. Drawn to it, Elena approached the mirror, her reflection distorted and twisted. As she gazed into its depths, she saw flashes of the past, glimpses of the mansion's dark history. She saw the original owner, a man named Alistair Blackwood, performing dark rituals and summoning malevolent spirits. His greed for power had unleashed a curse that bound not only him but anyone who set foot in the mansion. Elena realized that the mirror held the key to breaking the curse. But to use it, she would need to confront Alistair's spirit and force him to reverse the ritual that had doomed them all. Chapter 5: The Confrontation. With renewed determination, Elena set out to find Alistair's spirit. The mansion seemed to resist her, doors slamming shut and shadows reaching out to grasp her. But she pressed on, her will unyielding. She found him in the grand ballroom, a spectral figure dressed in finery, his eyes glowing with malice. He looked up as she entered, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "So, you've discovered the truth," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "But it's too late. You are mine now." Elena stood her ground, holding the obsidian mirror aloft. "Release us, Alistair. End this curse." He laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. "You think a mere mirror can stop me?" But as he spoke, the mirror began to glow, its surface rippling with a dark energy. Alistair's expression shifted from arrogance to fear as the mirror's power enveloped him. He screamed, a sound that reverberated through the mansion, as the mirror drew his spirit into its depths. The room shook, and the walls groaned as the curse began to unravel. Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders, the oppressive darkness receding. The ghosts that had haunted the mansion for centuries began to fade, their expressions of relief and gratitude etched in her memory. As the first light of dawn broke through the shattered windows, Elena knew the curse had been broken. She was free, and so were the souls of Blackwood Manor. But as she left the mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that some part of her would always remain bound to its dark history, a reminder of the night she ventured into the heart of darkness and survived.